There's a topic that I like to talk about, that I have talked about many times. It's sort of a blending of evolutionary psychology, non-duality, spirituality, and Buddhist teachings on the Noble Truths. And so I'll get right down to it. If you look around the room, you'll notice that, if you've heard this before, forgive me, because some people have heard this before, but if you look around the room, you'll notice that everybody has a mouth, And as a matter of fact, I think somebody told me once that our DNA is like about 80 or 90% identical to that of a worm. So, and a worm is essentially just a feeding tube. There's not much else there. It's a mouth, gut, and an anus, basically, and everything just sort of flows through that way. And there's something about being an organism on this planet is that you eat. Every day you eat, and then you feel satisfied for a while, and then you get hungry again and you eat, and then the process just continues over and over again. There's, in some sense, no lasting satisfaction to this mechanism of being an organism. You take something in, it metabolizes, you take what's good and you get rid of what's not good. And that process just continues and continues and continues. And it's very strange, but the human mind is very similar to that. We're always sort of like looking for the next experience. We want to take in the next thing, the next teacher, the next person that comes up here. We want to take it in. We want to take it in. We metabolize what's there. Our minds do. We sort of, what's not necessary, we get rid of, and we keep what's good for as long as it'll last. And invariably, the process doesn't last, because eventually there's sickness, old age, and death, like Buddha said. We can't avoid that. And so there's this inherent dissatisfaction to this process of being a human being, being an organism, period. We have temporary satisfactions, but not lasting. And it's also funny, too, because I was reading a book a few years ago on evolutionary psychology, and there was this theorist that was talking about in early hominid evolution, going back 4 million years, if you were an organism, you were an early human being, you went out and hunted an animal, you killed an animal, or you went out and mated, right? And then you just relaxed after that. It felt content. You were less likely to pass your genes to future generations than the ones that went out and hunted and killed an animal and then didn't feel content at all, and went out and did it again and then did it again, or went out and mated once and mated again and mated again. The ones that were never content, those are more likely to pass off their genes to later generations. Does that make sense? Because they're more likely to have more babies. And in evolution, in some sense, on a genetic level, is concerned about more babies. Nature is concerned about having more babies. And so basically, we're the genetic heritage of all that. We are, in some sense, in our DNA has it in it that we're malcontents. Because after many, many thousands of generations of not feeling content about what we have to go and getting more. This is what the result is. And Buddha talked about it in his first Noble Truth. He talked about life as suffering. And he didn't say it just to say it. He said it because this is a truth. And to the extent that we accept this truth is to the extent that we can start to overcome it. But most of us resist it. No, I'm going to find some moment in life when I have no suffering at all. The suffering doesn't arise, right? So we just keep on sort of fighting this truth. But if once we start just to really see what we are as an organism, we'll start to see that it's not even possible. We're fighting a huge genetic heritage, first of all, if that's true what these psychologists said, right? And then we're also fighting just the very mechanism of being an organism, period. Again, taking things in, metabolizing and getting rid of things, but never, always getting hungry again. Next day, let's go to the next movie. Let's go get the next meal. Let's have the next relationship, whatever it is. There's no lasting satisfaction. Of course, Buddha talked about it in a little bit different way. He was saying that in the First Noble Truth that anytime you attach yourself to an object, it's a setup for hell, basically, because that object is going to change or leave. Right? And in the Second Noble Truth, of course, Buddha talked about the cause of suffering, and he called it hunger and thirst. Hunger and thirst and craving. And this is the very thing these psychologists are talking about, right? Hunger and thirst, never quite satisfying. And so there's something about it in those first two truths in Buddhist teaching that it's really, really a truth. Whereas in some sense, if we think in some place in our mind that someday I'm not going to suffer, then you're just going to suffer even more. You're going to suffer more. And so when we really ground in that truth, really, really ground in the truth that, oh, I'm suffering today, I'm having a bad day, it's okay. You just make it okay because it's sort of normal. It's par for the course. And you start to relax this way, then there's an opportunity when there's this relaxation, when you're not fighting your humanness, that you can relax even deeper and deeper and deeper until there's such a deep relaxation in your being that there's an opportunity to recognize or cognize, maybe for the first time, maybe not for the first, but just cognize that there's something in you as you that's not bothered by the whole display already. That's that witnessing presence, or people call it witnessing presence or emptiness, or the formless aspect of our existence. And so, in some sense, going through this sequence of the first Four Noble Truths is like, or the first few of those truths, it's getting to a place where we start relaxing to what our nature is. But I find in my teachings over the years is that few of us ever get to this really radically accepting the first truth. We keep on thinking that we're going to find nirvana in samsara. But in some sense you will find it, but not the way that you think you're going to find it. Not by the way you think you're going to find it. It's like in AA, they have the first step. You have to accept the first step that you're an alcoholic before you can move anywhere else in the 12-step world. And of course, we resist that too. If you ever been to, a lot of people that go into the 12-step world resist saying that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. No, I'm not that. I may have a drinking problem, but I'm not an alcoholic. That kind of thing. We mutter to ourselves. We resist. And then we suffer more. And so it's interesting that there's these correlations, but in some sense it's not surprising that, Buddha said, I'm not a theorist. He says, I analyze. And so in some sense, when we just do analyze, when you just look really closely just at what we are, you'll see that what I'm saying is not so far-fetched, is it? What these people were saying is not far-fetched. But in some sense, these things are not designed to be happy. Right? It's not a far-fetched thing. Not up front. Because we tend to look in the world of form for something that we'll never find in the world of form. And because we'll never find it, we never cease looking for it. I often say, people come to satsang and they said, everybody's coming to satsang, we're looking for something. Right? We're looking for something. I remember, I'm also a psychotherapist. I remember one time somebody came into my office and had a list of 53 things that he was scared of. All right, 53 things he was scared of. I said, well, what's the one common thing in all these 53 things? Is that you're scared. So let's just look at that. All right? So when, in the same thing, when we go to satsang or spiritual teaching, we're looking for something, but what we're overlooking is that you're looking. It doesn't matter what you're looking for, it's that you're looking. What is this that's looking? What's looking? What's seeing? Always already. And that's what we're looking for. And to relax into that. Doesn't matter what you're looking for. Some people say, I want to stabilize an awareness, but just notice that you're looking to stabilize an awareness. What is that is looking? What's that that's looking? And that's what you want to stabilize in. Notice that you're already looking. You're already noticing. We're always doing that. That's the common thing. That's why spirituality is so difficult, because it's so simple. Everything else in manifestation, we have an opposite to it. Right? If day, we have night. How do we know day? Because we have night. How do we know night? Because we have day. But there is no opposite to this. It's like a fish swimming in water. Never knew not water. Doesn't even know what water is because it's never been out of it. Kind of thing. Well, the same thing. You've always been aware, and that's our essential nature. I guess this section this morning is about perspectives on non-duality. Realizing our deep nature, realizing that there's consciousness. It's alive and well and loving. It's awake. It's like a mirror, it's not bothered by anything. It's not bothered by the mechanism of hunger, thirst. Already not bothered by it. And then the realization that you are this. You are this that's awake. This that's awake and steady and clear. And then that which we are awake to, whatever the object is, and it's in manifestation, we are also that. And that's what I call non-dual, is the realization that there's just one thing happening. There's not formlessness that's separate from form. There's just this moment. Who we are is not a no self. It's not that we're not a self, but neither is it that you are one. Because what you are is too immediate to put in these, to be concerned about these deliberations about being a self or no self or both or neither. It's just pure immediacy. Just this, just this. Get that? Do you feel that? How quick you are? How fast you are? It's so immediate that it leaves those ideas behind in the dust. Right? And we get there. I know I just got the 5-minute bell thing, but And we get there by really just learning how to relax into our beingness, our humanness. I don't think it's an accident the Buddha, when he went to talk about the Noble Truths, did it in the sequence that he did talk about them. I think the early sutras was these, I can't remember what it was called, but something to the effect of, maybe somebody here will know these, these terms, but setting the wheel of motion of liberation. And liberation is essentially that. Adya, when he gave me my name, he gave me the name Mokshananda. Moksha means liberation. Liberation, what does the word liberation mean? Is that everything is liberated to be itself. You stop trying not to be something that eats every day and gets hungry again and suffers because of it. You stop trying not to be that. Does that make sense? You stop trying not to be this little bit of malcontentment because it's not personal to you, it's in the genetic stream. It comes to us. Get that? It's not personal to you. These evolutionary psychologists says that there's two basic human fears. And one, basically this DNA expression shows up as the fear of not being enough or not having enough. I'm not enough in order to survive, or I don't have enough in order to survive. And so we can surround ourselves by all kinds of stuff, and yet we still have this feeling inside, I don't have enough. I gotta go get more. Or, I'm not enough to make it here. I gotta improve myself. I gotta make myself better. Let that be there. It's not personal to you, these fears. Of course you're not enough. Of course you don't have enough. Just let it be okay. We can try to always convince myself, yeah, I am enough. Oh, I have enough. You know, and then that little fear just keeps on gnawing at us. No, you're not. You got to get more. Okay, all right. No more fighting. No more fighting. Just let yourself be you. Really all the way through. All the way through. Is that 0 time now? Okay. Thank you.